She ended up saying, even though we're on this labor strike with the W, she's on strike right now. They on strike right now. We're all here, we're all playing, we're all getting paid very sufficiently. So I'm not that upset if the league wants to play around. If we don't have a season, I have money. I'm getting paid from Unrivaled, and I have other revenues of income as well. It's really their loss.
Azure Stevens just said the quiet part out loud. If we don't have a season, I have money. I'm getting paid from Unrivaled. That's a WNBA player in the middle of CBA negotiations, essentially telling the league owners, we don't need you anymore. And she's not alone. This attitude has been spreading through the players' union like wildfire ever since that Philadelphia trip. But here's the problem. The numbers tell a completely different story than the confidence these players are projecting.
States the Unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball game between Hive and Rose on February 20th, 2026 on TNT drew 130,000 viewers. Okay, now this is the Friday game where Angel Reese came back. She had a pretty good game. 6 of 9, she shot 66% from the field. Can't be mad at it, right? Now continue, it says the matchup was part of the league's second season, which has faced lower viewership compared to its inaugural season.
130,000 viewers. That's what Unrivaled pulled for their Friday night game on TNT when they brought Angel Reese back from injury. For context, that same league was averaging 300,000 viewers in their first season. They've lost more than half their audience in year 2. And this is the safety net players like Stevens are bragging about during labor negotiations. The disconnect is staggering. You've got players acting like Unrivaled gives them leverage against WNBA owners, while the league they're hyping is hemorrhaging viewers faster than the WNBA ever did.
First year, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 300 or 200,000. And then now this year, they're averaging 100 to 130, whatever it was. Oh, it says it right here, 103,000 to 175,000, right? So I think it was a play to bring viewership back to where it was last year, and it just did not happen. It did not happen. Now, I'm not surprised because Angel Reese didn't even have the top viewership numbers last year in Unrivaled, right? And I had the fan base on my neck. Okay, the Angel Reese fan base was on my neck, dog.
Let's be clear about what's happening here. Unrivaled is averaging between 130,000 and 175,000 viewers this season. The WNBA Finals last year pulled over 2 million viewers for multiple games. Caitlin Clark's regular season games were hitting 1 and 2 million consistently. Ice Cube's Big 3 League, which has been around since 2017, averages similar numbers to Unrivaled, and it's still considered a niche product. So when Stevens says it's really their loss, referring to WNBA owners, you have to ask, is it though? Because from where the data sits, Unrivaled isn't replacing the WNBA. It's barely competing with WNBA preseason games.
Together, so y'all can find that median, so we can have a season. But for some reason, it seems like the players just keep coming out and saying disrespectful stuff like this. Like, hey man, we fine, you know, we got Unrivaled. But Stevens, not everybody is playing in Unrivaled. Unrivaled is not year-round either. Now, I'm guessing she's saying, hey, we're going to be fine for an entire year. We can survive off of this paycheck that we're getting from Unrivaled, right? But the thing is, you have players that don't necessarily get this check. They need the check that the league is given in that time frame of the season.
Now, here's what makes Stevens' comments particularly tone-deaf. She said, we're all getting paid very sufficiently from Unrivaled. But that's not universal. Not every WNBA player is in Unrivaled. The league only has 6 teams with rosters of 6 players each. That's 36 players total out of 144 WNBA roster spots. What about the other 108 players? What about the rookies who aren't established enough to get Unrivaled contracts? What about the mid-tier players who don't have endorsement deals or other revenues of income, like Stevens mentioned? They need that WNBA paycheck during the season. Unrivaled doesn't run year-round. It's a 3-month league that ends in March.
2 year, if you want to add this year into it, but it hasn't necessarily shown sustainable numbers. I watch it, I enjoy the league, but I can honestly state that there are not a lot of people that are watching the league right now, that are watching you guys. And I honestly don't know if Caitlin would even save the league because she don't even like 3-on-3. So would she join the play? Like, there's a lot lingering in the air for you guys to be beating on your chest. I'm just saying, be humble. And it's crazy. Yesterday, I started thinking about the salary cap, right? What they were asking for. They were asking for 9.4 or 9.5 million, and the owners were given 5.4 million on the salary cap. And the thing is, I think the reason they're trying to ask for so much there is because they understand that 5.
And this is where the CBA negotiation gets really interesting. The players are asking for a $9.4 million salary cap. The owners proposed $5.4 million. That $4 million gap? It's not just about money. It's about roster construction and competitive balance. Annie Costabile broke down what a $5.4 million cap would mean for the Las Vegas Aces. Breanna Stewart would make $1.13 million. Ahaja Wilson would get $904,000. Chelsea Gray would earn $887,000. Jackie Young would make $768,000. Those 4 players alone would eat up $3.6 million, or 65% of the cap. That leaves 8 roster spots, splitting $1.8 million. Each of those players would make roughly $245,000. That's still a massive raise from current salaries, but it's $25,000 less than the proposed league average.
To some of these super teams. And the main team that I started thinking about was the Aces. All right, you have 4 Olympians on that team. And I'm like, yo, I mean, it could work if they aren't selfish, which I'm not getting the vibe here off of what they're asking for. If some of them don't mind taking the pay cut and saying, hey, all right, y'all can get this, you can get this, you can get this. I will lower my standards so we can have a good team. I don't think that's necessarily how everybody is thinking. I think they want that $9.5 million because they want multiple Supermax contracts on the team. Now, shout out to Annie Costabile because she ended up stating exactly what I was thinking yesterday in this article, man. It is wild.
Here's what the players aren't saying publicly. They want that $9.4 million cap because they want multiple max contracts on the same team without sacrificing depth. The $5.4 million cap would force difficult decisions. Super teams like the Aces would have to break up, or role players would have to take significant discounts. And based on what we're hearing from players like Stevens and what Breanna Stewart said about everyone being 10 toes down on sitting out if they don't get what they want, it doesn't sound like anybody's interested in team-friendly deals. They want the bigger cap so everyone can get paid without tough choices.
The people at the top, rookies, everyone has been really consistent in that we want a season to happen. But if we don't get the things that we are wanting to stay 10 toes down on, then we're going to sit out for as long as that takes. Hey, do what you do. I just feel like Unrivaled is just not at the spot right now to be bragging like most of these players are bragging about it. Hey, pat yourselves on the back. Do what you have to do in the locker room. Celebrate. But I would say just be more professional when you're talking to the media about the owners, about what's going on in the W. You know, I think they are trying to work out something to work with you guys. They're not out bad-mouthing you guys. So just keep it respectful.
But let's get back to this Unrivaled situation because it keeps getting worse. The league brought Angel Reese back from injury specifically for that Friday night TNT game. They made a whole spectacle out of it. Teams traded players around to make room, which Candace Parker called out as unusual since nobody got anything back in return. It felt like a desperate ratings play. And it didn't work. 130,000 viewers. Reese shot 66% from the field, had a solid game, and the needle barely moved. Because here's the reality that players don't want to acknowledge. Angel Reese didn't drive top viewership numbers in Unrivaled's first season either. She's got a massive social media following, but that hasn't translated to television ratings in any league she's played in. So here's what this all means for the CBA deadline. The Players Union has built their entire negotiating strategy around the idea that they have leverage, that they can sit out a season and be fine because Unrivaled exists, that the owners need them more than they need the league. But the evidence doesn't support that position. Unrivaled's viewership is declining, not growing. TNT has an option to drop the league after this season, and with these numbers, that's a real possibility. The league isn't profitable yet, and most importantly, only a fraction of WNBA players are even participating. Meanwhile, the WNBA just came off its most successful season ever. The league averaged 1.2 million viewers across all platforms. Attendance was up 48%. Merchandise sales broke records. Caitlin Clark's impact drove the league to heights it had never reached before. The owners have momentum and public support. So when Azur Stevens says, if we don't have a season, I have money, and it's really their loss, she's speaking from a position of privilege that most of her union sisters don't share. She's one of the 36 players in Unrivaled. She's got endorsements. She's financially secure enough to miss a season. But what about Aaliyah Edwards, the rookie who just got drafted? What about the second-round picks trying to establish themselves? What about the veterans on minimum contracts who need every paycheck? They don't have Stevens' safety net. And when she goes to the media talking like the union doesn't need the WNBA, she's not representing their interests. The owner's proposal would give Breanna Stewart over $1 million per season. Ahaja Wilson would make $900,000. Role players would see their salaries double or triple. The minimum salary would jump from roughly $65,000 to $225,000. That's transformative money for most players. But it's not enough for the union leadership, because it would force super teams to make difficult choices. It would create actual competitive balance. It would mean stars couldn't all team up and still get max money. And apparently, that's a deal breaker worth sitting out a season for. Here's the thing about leverage in negotiations. You only have it if the other side believes you'll actually follow through on your threats. The owners are watching Unrivaled's ratings crater. They're seeing players publicly disrespect the partnership while simultaneously benefiting from the WNBA's record-breaking season. They're reading quotes like Stevens' "It's really their loss" comment, and probably thinking, is it though? Because if the season gets canceled, the owners don't lose much. They just had their best year ever. They've got expansion fees rolling in from new franchises. They've got momentum and public goodwill. Meanwhile, 100-plus players lose their primary income source, and the 36 players in Unrivaled are stuck explaining to their teammates why they torpedoed everyone's paychecks over a salary cap structure that mainly benefits superstars. Breanna Stewart said everyone in the union is 10 toes down on sitting out if they don't get what they want. But I'd bet money that changes real quick when players start doing the math on what they'd actually lose, because Unrivaled isn't paying WNBA money. It's not even close, and it's definitely not replacing a full season salary for 108 players who aren't even in the league. The irony is that players like Stevens are undermining their own negotiating position by hyping up Unrivaled so aggressively. They're essentially telling owners, "We don't need you," while standing on a foundation that's actively crumbling. Smart negotiators don't reveal their desperation, but that's exactly what this is. Desperation masked as confidence. So what happens next? The CBA deadline is approaching fast. Either the union comes back to reality and accepts a deal that's still historically good for players, or they follow through on the threat to sit out, and we find out real quick whether Unrivaled can actually sustain these players for a year. My money's on a last-minute deal, because when players start calculating what they'd actually lose versus what they'd gain, the math doesn't support a work stoppage. But if they do sit out, if Azure Stevens and Breanna Stewart and the rest of the union leadership actually convince players to walk away from the best proposal in WNBA history because it's not quite good enough, then we're about to watch Unrivaled become the most expensive lesson in leverage that women's basketball has ever seen, because those 130,000 viewers aren't going to magically multiply just because the WNBA isn't playing. If anything, casual fans will just move on to something else entirely. The question isn't whether the owners will cave, the question is whether the players will realize they're holding a losing hand before it's too late. What do you think happens when the deadline hits? Are players really going to sit out over this? Let me know in the comments.